Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bahamas. Nice to have you here in Fort Lauderdale. This balmy night. There's this little zephyr of a breeze out there, about 45 miles an hour coming off that ocean.
You mean Fort Lickerdale?
It's nice. Oh, you want to call it Fort Lickerdale?
Yeah.
That's fine, darling. It's wonderful.
Balmy.
It's nice to have you here. Balmy?
You know, you wait till we all get balmy and then you come in here.
What, do you feel that you're balmy now, darling? You have a point there, but if you keep that hat on, I don't think anybody will notice it. What a dinky mink. For heaven's sakes. And the thing that's amazing about that is those people are friends of mine, and I know those people are millionaires. Certainly that man on the yellow coat there makes a lot of money. He has a little trouble passing it, but he makes a lot of it. Remember the story about the girl who said she'd do anything in the world for a mink coat, and now she can't button it? Oh, where did I dig that up? My goodness sakes. There's our little kitten back from the sandbox. What we should do, if I had any common decency at all, would be to sit up here and do a little after-dinner music, because I respect the fact that most of you really have just eaten. Huh? You haven't et yet? One of Will Rogers' old cliches, isn't it? People who say they haven't eaten haven't even et. Is that right? I like stories about drunks the best, for two reasons. You never hear them on television. They got this sort of stupid code. But the biggest reason I like stories about drunks is because I feel that I'm more or less affiliated with them in the work that I do. You can all understand that. As a rule, I never even drink. As a habit, I do, but as a rule, I don't. I like the story about the two drunks who went out to play golf. The first drunk didn't even tee the ball up. He just threw it down on the ground. He says, "By golly, Fred, looks like I got a half a dozen golf balls down there." The second drunk says, "Well, you shouldn't have any trouble hitting them then, but all them clubs you got in your hand." Half hour later, the same two drunks are stumbling up the third fairway, and this one drunk turned to the other and said, "Fred, I'm going up and tell those two women up there either to get the devil off this golf course or let us go through. We'll be all day finishing here." So he ran up, got almost up to him, turned around and ran back. He said, "Good heavens, Fred, I almost got trapped. One of those girls is my wife and the other's my mistress. Boy, what a close call." The second one says, "I'm new around here. I'll go tell him." So the second one races up. He gets almost up to him. He turned around and ran back. He said, "By God, John, it's a small world, isn't it?" I like those positive thinking stories. Here's a fine story about positive thinking. This couple's married 20 years. Every night the husband comes home stiffer than a new broom. After 20 years of this, his poor wife has had it right up to here. She's had the course. She's waiting up for him one morning. He comes stumbling in. She looked at him. She said, "Frank, this is it. I've had it. 20 years we've been married, and every night you come home drunk. Look at you there, you bum. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. I've had it." He said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" She says, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to show you how stupid and ignorant you really look." So she reached up in the kitchen cabinet and pulled down a fifth, poured herself a triple hooker, this much raw booze, and gulped it bottoms up. Now, this lovely woman never had a drink before in her life, and this 100-proof whiskey got down about here and like to set the poor girl afire. She dropped the glass, fell to the floor, coughing, writhing, fuming, almost choked to death. Finally looked up at him. She said, "Good heavens, Frank, how can you stand that vile stuff?" He said, "See, I thought I was out having a good time every night, did you?" I think I struck a nerve there. course, maybe some of you gals think I'm a little partial because I tell them along lines that way, but there's just as many good ones that work the other way. This drunk stumbled into this barber shop. He said, I haven't got much time. I want a fast manicure and a shave. This cute little girl's working on his fingernails. He looked up at her through all that lather. He said, honey, what do you say you and me go out and really live it up tonight? She said, I can't, boy, I'm married. He says, oh, what the devil. Call your husband, tell him you'll be late. She says, you tell him, he's shaving you. You're not mad at me because they're not dirty, are you? All right. I hate dirty stories in a nightclub. I love risque stories because, after all, I think people go out to nightclubs to hear them. Some people listen to this, and maybe they think you're way too risque, but I think people live in sort of a shell who think things like that. They perhaps do it unconsciously. Too many of us set ourselves up as moralists. Life is too short. Booze. The only answer. Certainly. These two drunks were seated side by side in this transcontinental air-conditioned, glass-domed, double-decker bus, one of these new buses. So this one drunk turned to the other and said, what are all them people running upstairs for in the back of this new bus? Second drunk says, how the hell do I know? I never been in one of these buses before, but I'll go see. She's gone about 3 minutes, came back terrified. He says, white as flour. He says, good heavens, don't go up those steps. So the drunk said, why not? He said, you ain't got no driver up there. There's only one thing wrong with drunk stories. They're always about men. In the singular, always about a man. You never hear stories about girls who get drunk, but they do, and I'll tell you one. If I were to say two girls got drunk, that would sound too uncouth. This is too nice a place. If I were to say two young ladies became intoxicated, that'd take the punch out of the story. So we'll say two bras got fractured, and you know. We won't delve into the moral turpitude of these two, but we'll just say that they have long since lost their amateur standing. So these two buzzsaws are seated at a bar down in New Orleans. One turned to the other and she said, Rebecca, don't you think Claude's a lovely boy? Second girl says, I certainly do. He dresses so nicely. And the first girl said, and quickly, too. I like stories like the drunk walked into the bar and he sat down. 10 minutes later, another drunk walked in. Now, these two drunks don't know each other, and the two of them sat there for 3 hours and discussed the world situation, everything. They're both loaded. So finally, one drunk said, will you please excuse me? Second drunk said, of course I'll excuse you. Where are you going? He said, I'm going to the men's room. He says, go ahead and go. This drunk got up and went to the men's room. A few minutes later, came back, sat down. When he sat down, he said, well, hello there. Second drunk said, hello, how are you? He said, I'm fine, how are you? He said, I'm fine, too. He said, where you been? He said, I just told you, I went to the men's room. He said, did you go for me? He said, what the devil are you talking about? Did I go for you? Of course I didn't go for you. Second one said, if you don't mind, how about getting up and going for me? He says, all right, don't get mad. I'll get up. I'll go for you. So the same drunk got up the second time, went to the men's room, came back, sat down. And when he sat down, he said, well, hello there. Second one said, hello, how are you? He said, I'm fine, how are you? He said, I'm fine, too. He said, where you been? He said, I just told you, I went to the men's room. He said, well, did you go for me? He said, by God, you didn't have to go. I think the more ridiculous they are, the closer it hits, huh? This guy walked in the bar, this girl's seated at the bar, the two of them get loaded. Finally the girl says, "Where should we go?" He says, "I don't care. Where do you want to go?" She says, "Let's go up to my apartment." He says, "A good idea." They're up in her apartment. All of a sudden, footsteps. She said, "Good heavens." He said, "That's my husband." He said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" She said, "Jump out the window." He said, "We're on the 13th floor." She said, "This is no time to be superstitious." Oh, I love drunk stories. Just love them. Love them. There's such a casual air about drunk stories. This drunk fell in this elevator shaft, tumbled down 4 floors, got up, brushed himself off, and said, "By God, I said up!" That's why I love stories about drunks. They have the greatest outlook in the world. I'm not talking about real chronic alcoholics. People who like to get drunk, they have the best idea. And when I say drunk, I don't mean drunk to the point where you don't know what you're doing. I just mean where you get high and happy. Like the two drunks proceeded side by side of the transcontinental airliner, 20,000 feet in the air, 400 miles an hour, passing this bottle back and forth. And this one drunk turned to the other and said, "Boy, this is the only way to travel in this modern day and age, isn't it? Here you are on your way to California, and here I am on my way to New York, and we meet right here." The words of the great Americans, Horace Greeley. Remember what he said? "Go west, young man, go west." Right? All the young men went west, he stayed east, but all abroad. Power of positive thinking. Certainly. General Custer, remember what he said? "I never saw so damn many Indians in all my life." Other great Americans, too numerous to mention. Our old Mormon leader, Brigham Young. Remember what he said? "I don't cry you Brigham, just Brigham Young." He said, you'll have to admit the things these people said obviously aren't true. Why, certainly. Another great American, brilliant man, Paul Revere. Remember what he said at the end of his ride? "Whoa!" You have to think positive to make statements like that. Was that a photo finish, do you recall? Don't forget the words of another great American of ours, Abraham Lincoln. Remember what he said to his wife? "You and your damn theater tickets." Another great American, born in the fine state of Ohio, lived for many years in Vermont and Connecticut. He lived in Alabama and in Georgia, and he made millions of dollars in the days when you could keep the money he made. In his declining years, he returned to his native state of Ohio, where he eventually passed on, but he had the power of positive thinking. That's what made him a great American. So don't ever forget the words of this great man. I refer to our great old American inventor, Eli Whitney. Remember what he said? "It's your cotton-picking hands off my gin." That's what he said. George Washington, brilliant American, a military tactician of the greatest magnitude. Remember what he said to his troops just before crossing the Delaware? "Get in the boat, man!" You people realize the military have been making statements equally as brilliant as that ever since the days of Washington? Which accounts for the present condition of our military system. The United States Navy is going to rename their Vanguard rocket. They're going to call it Civil Service. Can't fire it and can't get it to work. That doesn't bring up the service, because we won't talk about that, because I was in the service. I was in the Marine Corps, and I fought like hell, but I had to go anyhow. Can you picture me protected you? I volunteered. Nobody drafted me. I thought Pearl Harbor was a girl. Wasn't mad at anybody. We won't talk about the military. We'll keep this on a positive thinking plane. Everybody thinks differently, acts differently. Overheard at a marriage counselor's office in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm in love with a nice girl. She's in love with me. Her parents are willing for us to get married, and so are mine. I know we can be very happy together. Now, my problem is this. But what should we tell my wife? It all depends on your outlook. Like this woman went to the doctor because she was run down. She's a physical wreck. She was shot, and the doctor examined her. And when he completed his exam, he said, "Where's your husband?" She said, he's down at the office. Doctor said, "Call him up and get him over here right away." So the husband come racing over at the doctor's office, and the doctor said, "Now look, my friends, I've been your physician for the 13 years that you two have been married, and I know you're very much in love with each other." And I could lay out a lot of medical terminology, but that would be ridiculous. He says, "I'll tell you in simple layman terms." He said, "Your wife she's just run down." He says, "And I'll tell you why. There's been too doggone much lovemaking in this family, that's all there is to it." And he turned to the wife, he said, "If you don't cut it out, you're gonna die." And he turned to the husband, he said, "If you don't let her alone, you're gonna kill her, that's all there is to it." So the couple got in the car and they were driving home. And he said, "Well, honey, I guess I'll have to sleep downstairs and you sleep upstairs, that's all I can think of." And this went on for about 3 months. And one Saturday night, the old man couldn't stand it any longer. He started sneaking upstairs. And he met his wife halfway down. He said, "Where are you going?" She said, "I was going down to die." He said, "Hell, I was going up to kill you." I've discovered that older people love to hear stories about themselves because I think they've had the school of hard knocks which only life can dish out. Like this woman went to the doctor and she said, "Doctor, I'm losing my urge for sex." The doctor looked at her. He said, "How old are you?" She said, "I'm 82. 82? He said, "Why, how old is your husband?" She said, "He's 84. The doctor said, "That's ridiculous." He said, "When did you first discover you were losing this so-called urge for sex?" He said, "Last night and then again this morning." Silly, isn't it? This woman went to the police station. She ran up to the desk sergeant. She said, "Officer, I've been attacked." He looked at her. He said, "Lady, how old are you?" She said, "I'm 76. He says, "When did this happen?" She said, 54 years ago. He says, "Well, what are you reporting it for at this time?" She says, "I'm not reporting it, I just want to talk about it a little while." Thank you very much. We'll see you in about 5 minutes. After all, a lot of doctors say, if you keep drinking, it'll kill you. But you ever notice you always see a hell of a lot more old drunks around than you ever see old doctors? Certainly. What happens to old doctors? A lot of you don't much care. I never much gave it a thought until I started wondering about it one time. Oh, they don't dry up and blow away. I'll tell you what happens to them. They all go to St. Petersburg to die, and they never do. They just accumulate over there. Thousands of them. 4:30 in the morning, you can't get a park bench in St. Petersburg, Florida. There's some 88-year-old doctor there ahead of you with a 19-year-old girl. Why, it's like charcoal broiling a steak over a pilot light. I must have struck a nerve there someplace. 91-year-old doctor stumbled into the Chatterbox bar over there, picked up this 28-year-old girl, and he cackled to her. He said, "Honey, I'm going to make love to you tonight like you've never been made love to." Half hour later, she pulled a feather out of the pillow and brushed him across the forehead. He says, what the devil are you doing? She says, comparatively speaking, I'm beating your brains out. You know what I do. Think positive about all things. Did you hear the story about the woman from Bayshore, Long Island? Got on the bus with 3 sets of twins. The bus driver just stared at her. He says, good Lord, lady, do you always get twins? She says, no, hundreds of times we don't get nothing. This man went to the doctor and he said, doctor, he said, I love my wife. He said, I admire her, I respect her, I honor her. He says, I wouldn't cheat on her for the world. He said, but doctor, the real wedded part of our married life has become a miserable, humdrum, haphazard affair. The doctor said, what the devil are you talking about? The guy said, I might as well admit and confess, Doc. He says, I no longer enjoy making love to my wife. The doctor said, that's a terrible thing to say. He says, how long you been married? The fellow said, 27 years. The doctor says, that's probably the basic cause of your trouble right there. That's probably the way you make love to her, like you've been married to her for 27 years. You got that don't give a darn attitude. The doctor said, now you listen to me and do what I tell you to do. He said, it's 1:30 in the afternoon right now. He says, I want you to leave this office right this minute. I want you to rush home and rush in the house and grab your wife. Surprise her. She'll never expect you. I want you to grab her and hug her and kiss her and squeeze her and bite her on the ear. Smear her makeup and tear her hair. The doctor said, if necessary, rip her clothes from her and make violent love to her. The doctor said this element of surprise creates a chemical reaction within any red-blooded woman. She'll want to make love like she never wanted to make love. He said, it'll be better than it was when you were on your honeymoon 27 years ago. He said, furthermore, you get back to this office tomorrow morning and see if I'm not right. 9 o'clock the next morning, this fella streaked back into the doctor's office. The doctor says, well, was I right? The guy said, wait a minute, Doc, let me tell you. He says, I not only left your office yesterday and rushed home and up my front sidewalk, but I ripped the front door off by the hinges. He said, I threw a block into my wife like a Purdue football player, knocked her 15 feet back down the hall. He said, I grabbed her, I hugged her, I kissed her, I squeezed her, I really surprised her, Doc. I bit both her ears. He said, I smeared her makeup, I tore her hair, I ripped her clothes from her and made violent love to her. He said, but doctor, it was still the same humdrum, haphazard affair. But her bridge club got a tremendous kick out of it. See, now you thought I was going to be dirty, didn't you? We don't tell dirty stories in here. It's like the story about the old maid. A lot of people think an old maid is a woman who waited so long for her ship to come in that her pier collapsed, but that's not true. An old maid is simply a woman who never got married or anything. Remember the story about the old maid who used to pray every night that somehow once again she'd be young and beautiful, but nothing ever happened? And then one night in her dreams, this little magic elf appeared, and he was seated up in her vanity, or chiffonier, or bureau, whichever you choose to call it. And the old maid pinched herself because she thought she was still asleep. Much to her amazement, she discovered she was wide awake. And this magic elf looked at her and said, old maid, you have prayed for so many years that you'd once again be young and beautiful, that I'm going to grant you any 3 wishes you want. He said, what would you like for your first wish? And the old maid said, I'd like $1 million cash. And lo and behold, as she spoke, the $1 million appeared beside her bed. She was thunderstruck. The magic elf said, now what would you like for your second wish? And the old maid thought and thought. She said, I'd like to be transformed into the most devastatingly beautiful creature in creation. Lo and behold, as she spoke, she was transformed from this snaggle-toothed old hag into this beautiful young girl. The magic elf says, now, old maid, you have 1 wish left. What would you like for your third and last wish? And she thought and thought and thought and finally pointed over into the corner. And she said, you see my miserable old alley cat over there? I want you to transform that cat into the most handsome man in the universe. Lo and behold, as she spoke, he was transformed from this ugly cat into this tremendously good-looking fella. And he walked over to her and he swept her into his arms. And he kissed her hair and her forehead and her eyes and her nose and her mouth and her chin and her neck and her shoulders and back up to her neck and her chin and her mouth and her nose. And he looked into her eyes and he said, "Darling, tell me something." She was awed by all of this. She said, "Lover, I'll tell you anything you want to know." He said, "Aren't you sorry you took me to a veterinarian when I was a kitten?" Booze. In fact, I've got a toast tonight for all men. Married or single makes no difference. Here's the greatest toast I ever heard. At last I found a perfect girl. I could not ask for more. She's deaf and dumb and oversexed and owns a liquor store. It certainly does give you something to think about, though, doesn't it? Do you ever notice whenever a guy opens a car door for a girl, either the car is new or the girl is? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Champagne flight number 1270-6654-3-90M5627171 from Fort Lauderdale to New York City, New York. We certainly welcome all of you passengers aboard and hope you have a delightful flight. I'm your plane commander. My name is Farnsworth Carlson. The crew and I boarded the aircraft approximately an hour and a half ago, and we've been sampling the champagne. The pilot of the controls for this flight is Captain Fred Smith, just graduated from flight school yesterday. And we're going to take off as soon as he gets up his nerve. Your stewardess is Miss Virginia McNamara, charter member of the Mile High Club. Formerly a hostess in a patrol wagon in San Diego, California. Normally, our stewardess makes these pre-flight announcements, but at the present time, she's in the back of the aircraft, sitting on the champagne, keeping it cool. She's been with the airline many years. Even the ground crew knows her. We respectfully evaluate the fact that many of you passengers have flown before, whereas others of you, this is your first air journey. So we do want you to relax and sit back and enjoy yourselves. Champagne will be served in approximately 1 hour. We have the weather report for you. The visibility is unlimited. The weather is impeccably clear. This should be a very smooth and enjoyable flight without any air pockets at all. Ooh, there was one right there. Which is very unusual because we haven't even taken off yet. Guess you must have run over another mechanic or something. By golly, that'll teach him to strike. We are now safely airborne. You may now fasten your safety belts, and you may now smoke. For those of you who care to read, we have magazines aboard. I was reading one of the magazines myself a little while ago. It was terrible about the Titanic, wasn't it? Now that we're airborne, I feel it my duty to tell you that because this is the inaugural of our Champagne series in flight, the duration of this flight will be 14 hours and 35 minutes. We're not attempting to establish any sort of a speed record, but we have so much champagne aboard that we have decided to take the long overwater route. There will be a momentary delay now while our flight engineer crawls down through the belly of the aircraft and disengages a fence which seems to have gotten hung up in the landing gear during takeoff, along with a couple of old television antennas. Somebody's missing gun smoke right now on account of that. When we reach 20,000 feet, we shall go under pressurization. This is done only as an added comfort to you, our passengers, so when we attain the altitude of 20,000 feet, our stewardess will be by with a little cotton to wipe the blood out of your ears as we go through this altitude change. Our true ground speed at this time is 207 miles per hour. Our true airspeed is 212 miles per hour. We have a slight tailwind. She's in the back of the aircraft sitting on the champagne, keeping it cool. Now, those of you who are seated on the right-hand side of the aircraft, if you'll casually look out the right window there, you'll notice that both engines on that right wing have completely dropped off the airplane. This is due to faulty maintenance and will be reported as soon as we return to the base. And as I told you, there's nothing to worry about because our plane captain, Fred Smith, just graduated from flight school yesterday, and he remembers all of his emergency procedures. I can only get him to regain consciousness. Passed out when the engines fell off. However, we've rated ahead of the Coast Guard. Our present position is 182 miles due east of Palm Beach, Florida, out over the Atlantic Ocean. We've rated ahead of the Coast Guard. They have a cutter located 29 miles due north of Havana, Cuba. Under normal conditions, this Coast Guard cutter should reach this sea in approximately 4.5 days. Upon impact with the water, one of these floats roughly 52 seconds. So that Coast Guard cutter ain't gonna do us one damn bit of good anyway you look at it. But I just thought I'd tell you about it on the way down. And as a group of passengers, you certainly are be commended because there's been no mass hysteria or anything else. You've been a tremendous group of passengers. As your plane commander, however, I feel it my duty to tell you to strap yourselves in securely, and we must prepare for a water landing. And you need not put your cigarettes out. I'm sure the ocean will take care of that without too much trouble. There, now we're in the water. That wasn't bad. You expected a big, large bump, didn't you? Now, please do not run up and down inside the fuselage of the aircraft because it makes the water burble underneath and we'll sink that much sooner. Our maintenance engineer has just informed me that some miserable Halloween prankster cut holes in all the life rafts, too. And the dizzy steward has just called up, wants to know when she just served the champagne. She even over in the water yet. But you have been a wonderful group of passengers. No point in reading any of the magazines now. They're getting soggy. Can't play checkers because they keep floating away. We ought to get a sensational write-up in Life magazine, though, if they get to us in time. But it appears pretty doubtful now. The water's up around our chests. I see we've lost some of the shorter members of our party. You've been a wonderful group of passengers, so as we all go down together, hold your heads up high and repeat these words after me. Booze is the only answer. That's why I like stories about drunks. Remember the story about the two drunks were at the bar, one turned to the other, says, Fred, tell me the truth. Did you cheat on your wife? Another drunk said, who else? Got this new drug called Spantran. It's half Spanish fly and half tranquilizer. 2 drops in a highball makes you want to go out and look for it, but if you don't find it, you don't give a damn. You know, now, some nights that story goes well, other nights it don't go worth a darn. I told the same thing in here last night. There's a fellow sitting over in the corner. I had him doubled up. We found out later his tie was caught in his fly, but he was doubled up. It would have been so darn funny, but he had a bow tie on. That wasn't the damnedest thing ever. Ridiculous. But you see what I mean by you're being a wonderful audience? When I tell you that, it may sound repetitious or like I'm being phony. Maybe I should flatter you, but I don't think I need to.
Woody?
Yes, sir.
Where are you going when you leave here?
I'll probably go to the men's room for about 5 minutes. When I leave here, I'm not leaving here, as a matter of fact. Somebody told me that last night. They heard I was leaving here. No, I have a mortgage on the building, that's all. I don't really own the place. We ought to introduce you to the boys who work here. We usually do. This is Art over on this end. Art's very good to his wife, never goes home. This is Claude here. There was a terrible rumor going around about Claude. He was one of these. That's a vicious, ugly rumor. It's not true at all. Claude is actually bisexual. That is to say, if he wants it, he has to buy it. That's what And this is Eddie right here. Ed's been with us quite a while. He's a fabulous human being, this Ed. He works in the daytime, too, for a plumbing contractor out on West Broward Boulevard. His name is Howard P. Carr, this contractor's got this big sign over his shop. It's an honest car, used John dealer. Eddie spends most of his time there. Our maitre d', as most of you know, is Tony. He's my paisano. Oh, I love the paisanos. You can't beat them for sense of humor. See the story about the crazy mixed-up Italian girl who didn't know which Tony gave her the twins? You're a tremendous audience, so we are going to have to bust this up because some of you have places to go and people to meet and things to do, and I respect that fact. I worked here 2 years before I discovered that girls didn't even want to go to Johnny while I was working up here. Why? I'll never understand. We're going to take a couple minutes off. As I say, I don't have any important announcements to make. Bless you. Thank you very much.